Two traders, Darren and Walter, pull back the curtain on profitable trading systems, consistent money management, and profitable psychological triggers. Welcome to the Two Traders Podcast.
Welcome back. You know where you're at. You're here at the twotraderspodcast.com. And this week, Darren and I look at structure and trading. We talk about taking breaks and how to structure your life so that you have blocks of work and blocks of play. And Darren and I take a very different approach to that. We also look at what it takes to foster intuition and what it means once you achieve intuition in terms of how you can explain this to others. And that's a little bit surprising. We also talk about the importance of routine and how your routine affects your trading. And we get into whether or not your sleeping patterns are determined by the right person or the right things. And Darren also talks about slipping back into some bad habits. All this and more in today's Two Traders Podcast episode. So we're back, Darren. Welcome back.
Walter, how you doing, mate?
So what's been going on in your life, Darren?
I've had quite a good week. I've had a good week trading-wise. But I've had a bit of a strange week as well, you know. I've kind of like slipped back into some old bad habits, and not necessarily in trading, but in the sort of other aspects of my life. And like normally I'm really good at going to bed early, and a few people have like mentioned on the Daily Trader thing that I've been sort of posting videos at like 2:30 in the morning and 3 in the morning and saying, you know, do you ever get any sleep? And, you know, I've been drinking more as well and staying up late. And it's kind of weird. I've been trying to work out why that is because, you know, really I'm kind of happy at the moment and things are going well for me. And normally when, you know, people sort of turn to vices like staying up late and drinking. And I've even like been drinking and smoking. I gave up smoking 3 years ago and I don't, yeah, it's just like, and you know, I'm trying to work out why it was. And it's just kind of weird that when things are going well, why, you know, I'm turning to, you know, you kind of associate those things with when things are going bad for people. So it's kind of a bit of a weird one.
Is that typically how it is for you, though, that you would say, like, you know, for example, I probably drink sort of like in celebratory mode, like when people are around and stuff, you know? And so that's kind of my mode is, like, I've never hit a bottle of vodka on my own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is that how it normally is for you, that you generally would say that when you're a bit down, you'd be drinking and smoking? Or does it just feel like you just kind of slipped into old habits for some reason?
Yeah, I mean, no, like you know, normally I only really do that now when, you know, when I'm sort of on holiday and I'm having a bit of a party, and generally when I'm back here, I'm kind of, my business partner said I'm pious. Is that the right word? But, you know, I'm very sort of, you know, no, I'm not having a bacon sandwich for breakfast, and, you know, I'm going for a run in the afternoon, and I'm kind of really like mega focused on being, you know, kind of just super focused all the time. And it's kind of like I've changed, and the only thing I know that's changed for me personally recently in my routine is I'm doing the Daily Trader videos, and, you know, they're having a kind of weird effect on me as well. It's kind of improved my trading by trying to sort of share my ideas with other people. I think I've probably got like a confidence boost from that, really, and it's kind of made me sort of drop my guard a bit. I hope it doesn't turn bad, you know.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of nice to have. I've noticed, like, in the private forum, you've got this great following of fans, and, you know, when you think about it, when I think about it in terms of psychology, I think, okay, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of the ones that when you get kind of higher up on the pyramid would be, you know, you want to be respected and appreciated by your peers, which is clearly what's going on in the forum, I've noticed. So, but as you say, I don't know what it's like for you. For me, the periods when I really have to look out and make sure that I'm on my game is after a really successful run. It's always the case that's when I get a little bit off in terms of following my rules, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's what's kind of going on, and that's probably why I'm noticing it. I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? I'm noticing a change in me, and what can I do to make sure it doesn't mess my trading up, because that's something I want to do. One of the interesting things that's come out of it from a trading point of view is that one of the things I always found hard to do before, and I'm finding easier to do now, is sit out and take a day off from trading. And I kind of always had this view. Even someone recently asked on the forum if I sat out on news days, and I said there was no need to. But I found myself doing that, and it's kind of worked quite well. I had like Monday and Tuesday I traded really well. I was trading the pound USD, and then when all the sort of big news was coming at the weekend, I kind of sized it up, and I took sort of one or two trades, and they didn't quite work out. And then I just sort of said, no, okay, right, just call it a day. Let's let the dust settle, and then come back. And I always used to find that really hard to do. And I think, I feel great that I'm kind of getting more in tune with that. Almost like I'm just much more relaxed about trading, And I think it's that fact that I'm kind of having to share on a daily basis what I think's going to happen, and then what trades I took. It's kind of regulating my trading in a way.
It's almost like you have to be accountable, like you have,
yeah.
But it's more than that, because you actually have to explain what you're doing and the basis for it. And often with things that we've been doing a long time, it's almost so automatic that you don't necessarily have that as a conscious thought that, okay, I'm doing this because of this. It's more like when you're driving, you know when to slow down because there's some crazy hoon up ahead, right? And they're swerving around, and you know kind of how to brace yourself for that and how to deal with that car that's coming up down the road, but you don't really think it out loud. I find the same thing with trading and anything where you've gone beyond the novice phase, where you're not consciously trying to access what you should be doing, but you just do it.
Yeah.
There's a really good book about this idea, which is Blink. Have you read the book Blink by Malcolm?
Never heard of it, mate. Never heard of it.
Well, basically, the whole book is this idea that people can get to this point where they're making automatic decisions and they don't necessarily understand why they do it. And this is, in cognitive psychology, they talk about this idea how, the experts aren't necessarily the best teachers because the experts don't necessarily know what they're doing. I mean, they know what they're doing, but they can't explain it. And so the book starts with this sculpture that they found. They thought that it was, and I'm probably going to get this all wrong, but they thought that it was made by Michelangelo. Michelangelo is like a famous artist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, so I got that right. I think it was him, right? It was someone back in, a long time ago. I have to admit, I'm going to expose my weakness here. My Achilles heel is my art history. But anyway, so they had this sculpture and they thought, okay, we're pretty sure they did all this testing on it and, carbon dating and all that. And, so the scientists had their go at it. And then they brought in this guy who was essentially an art expert, and he was known for being able to take a look at something and just knowing whether it was a forgery or not, right? So they brought this guy in, and this is at the Getty Museum, which is, if you're familiar with it, it's in Los Angeles. They have this wonderful collection of art, and it's right up on the hill. It's a beautiful part sort of on the entrance to Malibu. It's a nice area of Los Angeles. Believe it or not, there are a few nice areas of Los Angeles. Anyway, so he looked at it and immediately knew within seconds that it was a forgery. And this was a situation where they were ready to acquire it. They were ready to pay big money. They were like, wow, we can't believe this was lost throughout history. All the dating, all the scientific analysis had come out that this is real. And they just wanted, basically it was like the last stamp of approval. And it turned out that, of course, he was right. And so this is one of those things I think a lot about in terms of trading, which is not only is it possible to get to that point where you can almost see at a glance what to do with the market, which is, for me, most of the time stay out, but occasionally buy or sell. Or even more frequently, buy or sell given if X or Y happens. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece is, do you have that kind of access to your thinking so that you can explain what you're doing? And so for me, and I don't know if this is kind of what you're getting at, Darren, but for me, doing these videos in the private forum has been a really good thing for me because it's allowed me to almost create a checklist for what I do because what I've been doing is so inaccessible and automatic that I hadn't really thought about it in terms of a checklist for years. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I guess, and the other part of it, of course, is you're accountable. So if you say to people, look, I really think that the pound Singapore is ripe for a buy, then you've got to explain why you don't want to buy the pound Singapore now after 24 hours has passed or something like that. So you really have to articulate what your thinking is, whereas before, what I would do is just look at the chart and literally click away and go to the next chart and sort of scan through charts really quickly. Whereas now it's more of a process, I guess, in discovering, I suppose, what my checklist is.
Yeah, definitely. I notice it when I'm tweeting something and that I just kind of, I know what I want to say and I start writing it down, and then I have to kind of stop myself and like say, hang on, what am I saying here? I kind of pause and think about it, and it's quite fascinating, and it's been really helpful for me, and I guess that is one of the sort of positive things of being in this sort of group. The thing that puzzles me about you is that since we've been doing this podcast together and we've been meeting up every week and having a chat and that, it strikes to me, and from what I see on the forums, that the stuff you do there, it's like you're flat out all of the time. There's whenever we meet, it's like you're always just finishing another meeting and then you're going to another meeting, and you're racing back here to get the router, and you're handing the baby over to the childminder, and you're compared to me, your life just seems like every hour has got. Is that good for your trading? Do you think if all of that was wiped away and you had only trading, would that make it better for you or worse, do you think?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting that you say that, because maybe it might be this. It might be the reason why it appears that way is because what I try to do is set up my week so that I sort of do things like this podcast. I do it all in like blocks. So I have like these 2 blocks during the week where I do the majority of my like work, I guess you would call it work stuff. And then I have the rest of the week off to go surfing.
Nice.
So for example, like that's kind of how I try and structure my webinars back to back and things like that. And if someone wants to talk to me, I try and do it, basically today. These are the sorts of things that I try and do to make it so that I have big blocks. And the other thing is my friend who has kind of a similar life, and we surf a lot together. I used to surf with the retired people, the retired guys in my town, because they were the only ones that were, surfing at the same time I was, because everyone else was out at their job or whatever. But they're getting kind of old and they're not surfing as much, these guys. So it's been a bit tough because I've lost my surfing buddies. They're getting to the point where they're actually starting to give up surfing and things like that, which has been really kind of sad. So that means for me I spend more time, having lunches with them rather than surfing. But so that's been a transition. But luckily, I have this new friend who, over the last 2 years, we've sort of done the same thing, which is, he structures his day. So he basically has like a 2-day work week, and the rest of the week is open. And I've tried to do the same thing because I think it's a smart way to do it. I still try and have breaks, so in 2 hours I'm going to go for a run, and then I'll come back and do some more stuff. But yeah, so I think, I don't know, maybe that's what it is. Every time I'm talking to you, I'm racing around because I do a webinar before our podcast and things like that. It might also be just having a kid, a young kid, as you've gone through, it's that whole early part of that, I guess. Your focus changes from you to now all of a sudden you've got this other thing that's super important, and you've got to put a lot of focus into making sure that this other human is comfortable and and in the right situation. It's always sort of you're always sort of thinking, am I doing the right thing by giving the kid to the nanny now, or should I be with the kid, or those sorts of things. So it's really kind of and in fact, I was hoping to come out and see you. My wife's going out there to Bristol tomorrow, actually. And so we were kind of hoping to have a bit of a holiday and then go down to Italy and things like that. And I was actually going to stalk you, Darren. Show up at the pub. But in the end, we just decided the last couple of trips we've had with our little guy, he's been really a handful on the plane.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just felt like, I
Yeah,
don't want
that's
to go through that again. I'd rather just...
That's an epic journey with a small child, that is, to take. And I don't like surprises, mate, so if you're ever going to do
No, I
that...
would have told you. I would have told you. I would have told you. I would have said, hey, we're coming through the air. Because I know Bristol's not far, so I thought, yeah. It's always interesting to me when I meet other traders, like, what is their life like? For example, I met a couple that trade. They both trade. And they were from the UK, and they had moved to Portugal. So it was really kind of interesting seeing their new life in Portugal, where they basically were retiring down there. And, that was really fun for me, because you meet these people sort of on forums and on the internet, webinars or whatever. But it's really when you get to meet them face to face that you get a better sense of what their life is like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe my problem is I'm trying to fit too much into these little packets, because I really value my free time. And
Yeah. I was just under that impression that you were just, on it all the time, and I wondered whether, I was trying to work out when you actually got a time to sort of, focus on your own trading. But that sounds cool, and that sounds a bit like what I do, really. But I do mine in sort of 2-month blocks of coming back here and trading, and then I'll do a month block of just time for myself and, focus on other stuff. So sort of similar scenario, really, just different time frames.
Yeah, but when you're off, because I know you like to go off epic motorcycle trips, do you actually, does it depend on where you're at, whether or not you'll continue trading when you're off on holiday?
Yeah, I'm kind of half-arsed about it when I'm on holiday, and I might sort of trade off and on, but, really I don't. But there's more of just kind of that curiosity that I kind of look into the charts, and I do take the odd trade, but I'm not really trading in a way that you could sort of sustain and make a sort of consistent living from it, really. So it's mainly just that I'm kind of interested. I don't think that I could live that sort of lifestyle and trade at the same time. I kind of need, getting back to where we started tonight, I kind of need to get into that headspace, and focus, and I need the things around me to be in sync as well, like, eating well and having a daily routine and getting some sleep. And as soon as those things start to go, then I think I'd have difficulty long term trading successfully.
There's a lot to be said for the routine, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that popped into my mind when you were talking about staying up late and drinking and smoking and things was this idea of I guess you could call it biorhythms, but there was a book I read called Lights Out, and the basic idea of the book was that so heart disease and things like this sort of traveled with electricity. So what they noticed was that in the old days when the people were farmers and they lived out in the country, for example in the US, that the last pockets of the population to get heart disease were those that were the last to get electricity. And the author tried to link it back to this idea that we should naturally go through these cycles every year. So, for example, in the summer, which is where it is in the summer where you are now, we naturally are less likely to have as much sleep because we have more sunshine. So the idea is that we should sleep when the sun goes down, and we should be awake when the sun comes up. So what that means for most people in the Western world is that you probably shouldn't stay up as late as you do, and you probably should. Well, I guess most people wake up fairly early, don't they, with jobs and that. But so it's sort of like the sun gives you this predetermined sleep pattern, and what we've done by having electricity and artificial sun in our homes is we've created summer all the time. And so the other thing about it, the other part of it was this idea of, why are we gaining so much weight as a society? One of the things that the author talked about is how we sort of seem to fatten up as we go into winter. And so it's sort of the same rhythm where you fatten up during summer, at the end of summer, to get you through winter. That's right. That's what it was. So when you have light and when you're awake, you're less likely to burn off the fat or whatever, and you're more likely to eat. And when you're sleep deprived, certain things happen to you, like you get hungry for carbohydrates. So that's why if you've had a big night out in the morning, you want pancakes or some toast or something. You want some, some hash browns or something really sort of starchy, but you don't necessarily want that or crave for that if you've had a full night's sleep. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting idea because it might link to how your particular rhythms might change between summer and winter. And that's why they say it's really bad for people to hop hemispheres and keep in the summer year round. Although it sounds like a really sexy thing to do, it might be just enough to disturb your sleep patterns. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And all that goes with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed my trading
interesting idea.
Yeah, my trading friends who live in up near the Arctic Circle in Finland and Sweden and that, they're all obsessed with this idea of light and sun, because it's such an issue there. They've either got no sun at all or it's daylight all day, and they have like massive issues with suicide up there. So there's probably a lot of truth in it.
Wow, yeah. And then don't they also, like I know a few traders from Norway and Sweden, so don't they also spend a lot of time down south, like they'll go down to Spain or Italy or something like that?
I think a lot of them would like to, and I think some, can't necessarily do it because of work commitments. But, I chat to this guy from Finland all the time, and I'm quite into my sort of architecture, and if ever I send him like a picture of a beautiful wood house in the forest or something, he's like, I'm from Finland, right? I'm not interested. Pick me find me a house on the beach, because they're just so keen to spend more time outdoors and in the sunlight and that.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing that I had from a trader this week, so this is kind of going back to the point about your life being hectic and that. I get emails from another trader, and it's a female trader, and I noticed like in her trading, I've kind of got this kind of bug now for looking at things in people's life that might be sort of replicating in their trading and seeing where the link is and that. She's got a really hectic schedule as well. She's also got a young child, and I noticed when she was talking to me about her trading system, when she first sent it to me, I said, well, how do you trade that way? It seemed really, really complicated. It was pages and pages of detail and that. And I wonder whether, in some of us, we just want to make it complicated because we've got a feeling that it's something important, and if you make it complicated, you're more likely to succeed. And she wasn't particularly happy with that analogy that I made. But I do wonder that, because we do all, want to make trading a little bit more complicated, thinking that that's going to make it easier. And, is that something we do?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's, whether we realize it or not, we probably think, look, there are a lot of very smart people. There's teams of computers. All of these things are in the market, and we have to somehow defeat them, or at least occasionally win against this army of people with more resources and more power, intellect, and all that than we have. And so there must be something that we can do to tilt the odds in our favor, and that might be adding 3 or 4 more indicators than we typically need. And I think you're right about this idea of your trading may reflect sort of your approach in life. What I try to do, I think, with my trading, which is sort of similar to what I try and do with my scheduling in my life, is I have essentially 2 times during the day when I want to definitely see the charts. One is in the morning when the daily candle closes down here for me, which is 5 p.m. New York time, and the other time is when London starts to trade. And to me, those are the most critical junctures in the chart. The other one would be when New York starts to trade, but I'm usually either sleeping or thinking about going to sleep when that happens. I try not to pay attention. And also, I found that for me, it's a little bit trickier to nail that time period when New York comes in, perhaps because I'm just not used to watching it as much. And so by having these 2 packets of time that I want to pay attention to the charts, I guess to me it's very similar to the way my week is set up, where I have these packets of work, where I essentially have 2 days where I'm going to do, quote, work stuff, right? And then the rest of the time I'm trying to focus on other things which are not work or chart related. And what I've noticed, like the first time, Darren, I ever had a smartphone, which was, I was kind of an early adopter, and I had this phone that had, and I worked out how to get MetaTrader on it and all this stuff, right? What I found was I would be out to dinner with my wife, and which is, you know, in the evening, that's London session, and I'd be watching the chart and not really paying attention to what we were doing, which having a nice dinner or whatever. And what that meant was I was actually changing my trading plan and what I was going to do with a particular trade simply because I could watch the market unfold in front of me. And I thought it was a great idea to have my account in my pocket and have internet access and all that. You know, this was 10 years ago, so it was a while ago but it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I think that learning that sort of like a light bulb came on for me, where I said, okay, well, it looks like I'm actually much better at coming into a chart fresh and seeing the chart after quite a bit has happened, and I'm not so good at sort of analyzing it on the fly as it goes, you know, 1 hour candle by 1 hour candle. And that to me was a big leap for me in terms of, you know, bottom line results, because I've learned to give myself that buffer between glances at the chart. And I don't know if this is typical for everyone, but for me it was a big deal to be able to get away from that crack addict feeling of having to see every 1 hour candle print. And that's to me it's been a very liberating thing. And some people might say, well, Walter, that means you're going to miss out and you're going to get stopped out and things like that. Well, if you're trading the weekly chart or the daily chart and your stop loss is 200, 300, 500 pips away, that's a rarity as it is anyway. So you don't really have to concern yourself with that. And the advantages that you get and the benefits that you get from seeing the chart with fresh eyes, as I like to say, far outweighs the ability to make a decision on a trade that's going pear-shaped. So that's what I found. I don't know if that's something similar to what you've, like, for example, if you're off on holiday, I don't know, when you come back to the charts for the first time in a couple of days or weeks, does it make it easier for you?
It's nice to come back. I think, you know, that idea of the structure, and I go on a lot about, in my strategy, it's about creating that structure rather than it having any particular, this is what you're looking for, this is the 3 stars aligned. It's more about, like you say, having like a structured day and a structured way of working, and a lot of my strategy is just setting that structure up that you work within, and then there's like a few elements that decide, you know, the outcome, a few other elements. And I think, you know, we kind of think it's just strategy and emotions, and I think it is that kind of workflow as well, isn't it? I think we say it's about finding the right strategy for your personality, but it's kind of almost, it's like the right time frames for your life. And for you, it's that longer time frame, and your structure, you structure, it's almost like you structure your week in time frames as well. And I kind of do the same with me, and I'll have like a 2-month period of trading, and then a sort of a month of going and sort of letting my hair down and enjoying myself. And yeah, it's kind of, you've kind of got to find that way to sort of step in and out of the trading arena that works for you, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, that's the key, I think, is that you don't, and there's a real concern in the beginning, I think, with getting this right. And what traders tend to do is they default to their mentor or the person that they look up to, rather than thinking about, like you say, how is this going to affect my life? How can I fit this in around my job and, you know, my family, or whatever the important things are in your life? And so to me, I think it takes a while for most people to get it right, because they essentially just say, well, he's making money at it, so I'm just going to do what he does. And he trades the New York Open on the, 15-minute chart, so that's what I'll do.
Yeah, but he might have a completely different life set up. He might have no kids. He might be living, in a condo in central New York, and you might be living in a house in the woods in Finland. And that's, I think, that's kind of I've never really sort of seen anyone sort of touch on that really, and look at the other elements of your life and how they're going to sort of impact on it. I know we're kind of told that you shouldn't trade when they are impacting on it, but it's kind of almost impossible to do that, because you're there, you're living it, and it's all going on around you, and unless you're in position where you can dictate the rest of your life. But most of us, we're doing other jobs and we have other commitments and it's getting those elements right can make a big difference. Like I've been finding, now it's the sort of added structure of this sort of daily trader has kind of made me be disciplined on the days I'm trading. I need to think about my analysis, like you were saying before. I might have just come and kind of not really done my analysis because I kind of know it in my head, but now I'm having to sort of write it down and put it in a video and share it with other people. I'm giving it a bit more focus and considering it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think the big lesson for me is that traders who are feeling like it's difficult to tick all the boxes in any given day in terms of work and commitments and your trading, it probably means that you're approaching it the wrong way. It probably means that you need to come at it from a different angle, which is, okay, now when am I really going to be able to make my analysis? Not in the morning, because I've got to get my 3 kids ready for school and I've got to get on the subway and whatever. But when I get home after the kids are asleep, maybe that's the best time for me. So that's when I'm going to set aside that 20, 30 minutes every day to figure out when I'm going to enter into these trades and what I'm going to do with the current trade. So, that might be, for those people listening here, one thing to take away is if it's not working the way it is right now, if you feel like you're missing out or you feel like you're stressed out with your trading, it probably means that you need to restructure it in a way so that you can trade and you can be more relaxed and more deliberate in your approach. In the beginning when I traded, I felt like I had to be awake during the London session, and that meant, living in California, that meant that you had to be awake in the middle of the night, and that was probably the wrong way to do it. If I were to do it over, I probably would have instead gone to bed early and woke up before New York opens. That might have been a better approach, and instead learn to approach the New York Open as my jumping off pointer, as it were, for the day. Or even better, take a step back like I do today and look at higher time frames so that it's not as critical when you're watching the chart. So for those listening, I think that trading shouldn't be another stress. It shouldn't be another thing that adds to your sleep deprivation. And I know a lot of people out there are probably like I used to be, which is, trading was so important that sleep came second, third, or fourth on my list of things to do. You can catch yourself when you're not on your game. You can look back and see some of the emails that you sent and the words are all jumbled up, or the texts on your phone, and you know that you're sleep deprived as a trader when you're not coherent. That was the big thing for me, was learning that, okay, I'm doing something really bad here because I can't even get my words right. So something's going on. I need to figure out a way to get more sleep.
Yeah.
And for me, the easiest way was just to move countries.
Yeah, well, listen to my daily trader videos from last week if you want to hear what it's like when you're sleep deprived and you've been drinking and smoking and staying up too late. So, but what would be great would be if some of the listeners here, this is interesting about structure. It'd be good if people perhaps leave some comments about how they structure their life around trading and get some sort of feedback there.
Absolutely, yeah, that would be good. Yeah, I think that would be helpful especially if you've been trading for a while. There are going to be some people that are new to trading, and that's really going to be something that's going to help them, is to be able to point out some of the mistakes that you made. Like I said, for me, a big mistake was not not ranking sleep high enough on the list. Yeah. All right, Darren. Well, I'll see you next time. Thanks for your time, and thanks a lot for today's session. This was fun.
Yeah. Cheers, Walter, and I'm going to get an early night.
Bye.